Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Christopher Gajewski. Let's unmask mental illness. With the last episode, Rob Thomas got back into my head, so he'll be joining us again this week. I really do need to find a way to get in touch with him. We'll also be joined by one of my favorite writers, L.E. Modetzi Jr. Thomas's first solo effort, vastly underrated in my opinion, is the title of this podcast, Something to Be. It is also the answer to a question. Modetzi helps answer the question as well. I've been struggling. Starting a new business is like a vortex for me, pulling me in. I'm a workaholic. It would be sort of like a recently recovering alcoholic buying a bar. Too much temptation. Far too much temptation. There are 100 things that need to be done when starting a business, and I want to get them all done all at once. I need to get them all done all at once. I think anybody in my profession has to be borderline something or another, if not fully across the border. OCD, control freak, perfectionist, something. It has the tendency to not leave room for much else. In my case, the pressure of not having room for anything else creates a pressure in my skull. The pressure can immobilize me, even when I have extra time to do whatever I want. Not doing anything when I have that time creates a feedback loop, a distortion, that creates even more pressure. It is one of the things that led to my fiery burnout a few years ago. A very long time ago on the podcast, I talked about getting into an episode about professional burnout. It was in one of my first few episodes. Well, I'm finally getting around to it. But before getting into the episode, the important stuff, I just want to remind everybody that I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, or any kind of professional with an ist at the end of their title. I'm just a guy who has been there. If you are in crisis or know somebody who is, I implore you to reach out to a professional. In the United States, there is now a national hotline you can call or text, 988. I'll repeat that because it bears repeating. If you or someone you know is in crisis, I implore you to reach out to a professional. Dialing or texting 988 in the United States will put you in touch with a crisis counselor instantly. Now, let's get into the episode. First off, to any of my investors or business accounts that might listen to this, I'm okay. Really. It's not the I'm okay when I'm really not from previous episodes. It's an authentic I'm okay. But that is one of the things that is creating pressure on me. It was very easy to be me, something to be, all of me, when I was not a business owner. As I spoke about in the previous episode, it was easy to be an author and a mental health advocate when I was unemployed in Tijuana. Not only did I have the time to do it, but there was no fear of having the stigma attached to me. The stigma is very real. When I first started this podcast, I burst out of the closet in a big way, talking about depression, suicide, PTSD, anxiety disorder, and all kinds of things that scared the living hell out of people. Hell, I had the trumpet line like you see in the old medieval movies announcing me. When I first began coming out about it, I immediately started running into odd stares and people shifting away from me. Me being me, it just led to me adding another line of trumpeters and telling them to up the volume and put some swing into it. Hey, I was planning on killing myself. What the hell did I care? There's a certain amount of freedom, a huge amount, in not giving a shit anymore. When I shifted away from the plan to kill myself and into the role of a mental health advocate, I still didn't give a shit. That was the entire point. To talk about these things and be open about things to encourage others to do the same. To live life out loud instead of quietly in desperation. There are a lot of misconceptions about mental illness. There is a lot of stigma attached. The fear really started to worm its way into me when I was living in Tijuana. At 51 at the time, I was unemployed for the largest stretch of my life since I started working when I was 14, I think. I have a killer resume. I was considered one of the top people in my field. I couldn't find work. Did it have anything to do with my LinkedIn profile and the post about mental health? Hey, it's a real enough question. I did hear that one of my investors pulled out, maybe two, when they researched my post on Facebook. I think the mental illness post scared them away. Don't worry about it, Brian said, my main investor and business manager. I got this covered. You be you. Now he gets after me for not doing weekly podcasts because he knows it is a part of my healing journey. He's got 26 years sobriety and is very open about it. I'm not quite falling off the wagon and then running to catch back up. It's more like I fall off, get something caught on the bumper, and get drug along for a mile or two before I clamber back up. The last thing that is going to happen is burning out again and seeing the wagon far away in the distance. I've learned too much, and I have help. I guess Brian is something like a sponsor. I need to figure out, though, why I burned out in the first place. There were many things going on. Professional burnout played a heavy role in what happened to me. How did I get there, and how do I not go back there? More importantly now, how do I be me, all of me, the best version of me? Well, it started out the other night, Friday night. The 100,000 things to do when starting a business have been whittled down to a much more manageable 8,549. I knew I was there, and it was time to start putting the plan into place that Brian and I had spoke about when I first moved back up here. Work, the business, is Monday through Friday, wake up until about 3 p.m. That's my 50 hours or so. After 3 and weekends is all about the other parts of me, the balance. I swore that when I woke up on Saturday, I would not touch anything to do with work. So, of course, when I woke up on Saturday, I did a little bit of work, catching up on some emails. I felt myself bouncing along behind the wagon, being drugged as I signed the last email, and then I clambered back up onto the wagon. Hey, what can I say? It's a work in progress. But then I closed out of the emails with other work things tickling my mind, pushed them away, recentered, and finally opened up a file my editor sent me a long time ago. I got back to work on my book. It was a glorious morning, just reading, writing, and editing. Then I bumped along behind the wagon again as I made my way to Staples when they opened to pick up a few things for the business. Did I mention it's a work in progress? I worked on the book for a bit and then really started thinking about this podcast. I haven't been doing too much with it. That was expected. This really takes a lot of effort. I've always said it is like having a part-time job that doesn't pay anything. The emotional effort is huge as well. I pour myself into this. The only way to do it right is to be completely and totally vulnerable. To do the podcast, I need to get metaphorically naked. I didn't have a problem with that in Tijuana. Here in Philly, starting a business, I can feel a pressure against it. The pressure combines with the time and energy investment. Should I make this my last podcast? That's about when Rob Thomas came in and urged me up on stage to do some karaoke. Hey man, I don't want to hear about love no more. I don't want to talk about how I feel. I don't want to be me no more. But I do. Rob is urging me through the next lines and then the chorus. I've been looking for something I've never seen. We're all looking for something to be. Each podcast is about 4,000 words or so. That's easy. I can give you 4,000 words on any topic at any time. Go ahead, get me started on a tangent. You'll shut me up after about 50,000 words, or try to. But there is more to it. For one thing, there is the entire getting naked and being vulnerable part. To do that, I need to shut out everybody and everything. I need to maintain a detachment to all things, like a LinkedIn profile. The real time and effort comes from research, looking for triggers. Rob can't be there to help me all the time. Something needs to trigger the podcast. It's not really that hard. It's just about exploring myself in the web. LinkedIn, actually. There's always a lot of information on there in certain groups, non-orthodontic related. I find triggers, inspiration in posts and articles. I don't even have to think about how it relates to myself. The right one just wraps itself inside of my head and begins squeezing out thoughts and ideas. But I've been moving away from those posts and groups as I concentrated on my business. I now have a ton of article and video ideas on orthodontics. Hey, it was what I had to do. And that's how I got into trouble before. My business partner sucked, but I was doing okay. He was just an employee, but I had managed to get everything under control with my own employee work and fiduciary duties. I thought I could finally start being a writer again. I remember it clearly, though I forget exactly when it happened. About 10 years after starting the business, I dove off a high cliff aiming directly towards the wagon that could take me to where I could be something, be me. I had good aim, damn good aim. I was heading right for it. That's about when the technological tsunami hit my industry. Instead of hitting the wagon, I hit the wave and was carried away. I was soon doing my employee work and the business management work, but I was also learning technology fast. I pretty much had to teach myself how to be a mechanical engineer with an expertise in 3D printing and software. Long story, but I rode that wave into professional burnout. It was a hell of a ride, a rush, exciting, until it wasn't anymore. The tsunami wave finally crashed and left me on a beach, exhausted and hurting. L.E. Modesi Jr. sitting in the audience. After I get done my turn at karaoke, he takes out his earplugs and says, "You forgot about Laris." I have to nod in agreement. As I've said many times, I'll take my truths anywhere I can find them. Many of my truths did not come from holy books or books of wisdom. They come from the oddest places, like the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Be excellent to each other. Mr. Modesi is a fantasy fiction author. I picked up his first book a very long time ago. It remains one of my favorites, The Fires of Paratime. In his Recluse saga, though, with Laris the main character of the first couple books and a few others, I found a lot of truths. Talk about attention to detail. I think you can actually use Mr. Modesi's books to learn trades like carpentry and metalwork. I found a lot of truths in there as well. I would later put it together that his magic system in the universe is based upon systems theory, one of my soapbox issues. But I could dive deep into Recluse and lose myself and find pieces of myself. I'd forget, though. What did Laris learn, Mr. Modesi asked me. One of the first lessons he learned from Justin. Rob and I pull up chairs to sit with him. I need to explain it all to Rob, who may or may not have read the books, but you need a little background for any of this to make sense. Long story short, Laris is a young mage who is exiled to go find himself. He meets with an older mage, who later turns out to be his uncle, after an encounter with a chaos wizard that he barely escapes from. The older mage, Justin, takes Laris under his wing and starts teaching him order magic. The chaos wizard, I forget his name, is looking for someone exactly like Laris, a young, inexperienced mage who has power but cannot protect himself. Chaos wizards extend their lives by taking over the bodies of others with power and transferring their identities into them. This really does all relate to the podcast and professional burnout, by the way. Back to Recluse. Justin explains that the only way he can teach Laris how to defend himself is by showing him. Justin enters Laris's mind. Laris's mind is fogged. Swirling fog is all that he sees and knows. He gets lost. Justin is taken over his mind and body. Laris is losing himself. Then he remembers what Justin had tried to explain to him. I am me, he starts thinking. I am Laris. By concentrating on his identity, who he was able to shatter the fog and really do a number on Justin, who was really a good guy trying to teach. Yeah, it's easy for me to get lost in that fog. It's even easier for me to get comfortable in it. That's where the pressure puts me. I forget who I am and embrace it. I lose myself in fantasy fiction books, strip clubs, and other assorted unhealthy coping mechanisms. The easiest thing for me to get lost in is work. Hey, it's fun starting a business. Building the foundation is much like the lessons taught about other trades in Mr. Modetzi's books. It's easy to get lost in the details. Details and feedback from potential customers lead to other projects. Feedback from business people and other lab owners also have my Philly attitude up. I'm being challenged. Battle. Like in the John Travolta film Michael. My deal with Brian and the other investors was a very simple one. The investment money has to carry me in the business until it becomes self-sufficient, can sustain both the business and my salary. With the investors that pulled out, I was told that is impossible. A startup, I've been told, will never be self-sufficient until maybe after the first year. I'm planning on doing it in months. Other lab owners have my backup, the infantry really combining with the Philly. The plan was to just build a small little business, operated and run by myself, to make money while I work on my personal projects. I'm pursuing ideas I had years ago when the technological shift first occurred in my industry. I'm starting to step on toes. Some who got my old accounts have their panties in a twist about me approaching them. That pisses me off. Another challenge, another battle. I was there long before you. Hell, I taught many of you how to get there. My small little business unfolded in my mind to become a national lab. It's not that hard to do with what I know and what I can put together. How to approach offices and staff, how to educate them on how to integrate the new technology to improve their bottom line and open new avenues of revenue. I have over 35 years experience and expertise at this. Hell, parts of my plan intersects with the mental health advocate label. I'm stepping on your toes? Bullshit. This is my stage. I own it. Your toes are on the stage because I allowed it while taking a sabbatical. I'm back now to rock it. John Travolta is smiling his Michael Battle smile. Rob Thomas and Ellie Modetzi Jr. are face-palming and shaking their heads. I've been looking for something I've never seen. We're all looking for something to be. Who am I? What do I want to be? How do I get there? How do I fight the forces of the vortex pulling me down to the label of workaholic that burned me out? It is so damn easy, and it's so damn hard. It is like last night, Saturday night. and not allowing myself to allow the repulsion from the vortex to tumble me into a bar or other unhealthy coping mechanism. It was about sitting down and working on this podcast, working on the book a little bit. Then I did what I rarely am able to do. I watched a movie before going to bed. The pressure of so many things are building. I pushed them aside yesterday and did something that brings me so much joy. I spent time with my 2.5-year-old nephew. Before my burnout and after I separated from my wife, Thursday night became strip club night. The atmosphere, dancing, touch, and illusion of intimacy was a balm for me, an escape. My new work schedule and my new sleep schedule make that impossible. Friday or Saturday night instead. Thursday night is now Ann and Michael night. Ann, my sister, makes dinner. She wants to try to impress me or something. We ordered out a few times. I didn't like it, so I asked for what I really wanted, something simple. Last Thursday was one of my favorites, hamburger helper beef stroganoff. This past Thursday was another one of my favorites, Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes and corn. Thursday is also nephew time. I haven't had a 2-year-old nephew in 20 years. There are differences between Michael and Joseph, but the pure joy is very much the same. He has this belly laugh and smile that is infectious. He has this awe and wonder about everything. He has this very weird fixation on my table that makes me laugh because he always asked about it, where it is. I know from previous experience that the clock is ticking with Michael. Uncle Chris is huge right now. In a few years, though, I'll start getting smaller as he grows into video games and friendships. It's okay. I understand. I expect it, and I even want it for him, to explore the world that will become increasingly larger. By 6 or so, I'll be relegated to a secondary position as opposed to the primary that I now play. I'm okay with that, but I need to take advantage of it now. So I stop by on Thursdays, have dinner, play, and then help get him ready for bed. He wants me to sit by him on Ann's bed while she wipes him down and changes him. Then we pick out a book to read. I read it to him, I get my kisses and hugs, and then Ann puts him down. I hang out for a little while longer while he gets out of bed and opens his door a half a dozen times. Go back to bed, Michael. I love you. I smile with Ann and shrug. He's 2. Then we go outside, have another cigarette, and I make my way home. Always smiling. Yeah, Thursday night is now Ann and Michael night, for as long as they'll let me. It recharges me in ways that other things cannot. An uncle to a 2-year-old is something to be. Then I get home, about 8 or so. I fight the vortex and the repulsion against the vortex. Pressure builds. I can't go to bed yet. What do I do? Who am I? I am not a TV watcher. I just can't. I'm a writer, a podcaster, an author and blogger. I'm a mental health advocate. I'm a mentor to children who stutter in their parents. That is who I am, something to be, something to strive for so the balance between work life and personal life makes the pressure go away. I need to start moving back towards that. It's things that I learned while traveling and then living in Tijuana. I fell into the other extreme, a fantasy land of being who I was without the balance necessary of a work life and income. I have the tools necessary to move forward. Slow steps, baby steps. Is this my last podcast? Nah, not by a long shot. Instead of unplugging from it, I need to fully plug back into it. get back to incorporating it into my weekly routine. Something to be while supporting myself. It's a work in progress, as it will be for a long time, perhaps the rest of my life. Another step I really need to pursue is socializing. I need to develop personal relationships with, well, people. I need the interactions that I seem to deny myself while wearing the personas of business owner, writer, and podcaster. Everybody thinking I want to date makes it difficult. Anybody just want a cup of coffee? Let's just meet and chit-chat, talk story. And with that, it's a wrap for episode 32. Episode 33 will be along next week on schedule. There are a few bumps coming up in the schedule as I have to balance some business and personal trips, but weekly podcaster is something I have to be. Aloha.